somebody said that they said something about how like Busse is a fraud and a liar, and I was like, yeah, totally. That's why so many Republicans are turning on Greg. It's because Busse's a fraud. I said that totally adds up and doesn't sound like a poorly thought out talking point. And they said, no, he claims to be for the Second Amendment. However, absolutely unequivocally wants to take away our gun rights. Ask him. And I said, yeah, the guy who's constantly hunting and owns way more guns than you wants to take away the guns. Yeah, that adds up. And then he doubled down again and said, no, trust me, and used my God-given name even. It said Jason. Look it up. I promise you, he does not want us to have our gun rights the way they are today. Before we get rolling, will you explain to people, if you are going to modify the gun rights, what the modifications are going to be, and if people like yourself who own ass loads of normal guns responsibly and choose to use them, if they are going to be affected by any changes you would make?
I missed out on that conversation you were having with that fella because I was hunting and shooting with my boys the last 3 days. So it comes as some surprise to me that I'm being labeled as whatever. Look, I sold 3 million guns. Okay, I worked in the firearms industry for 25 years. I believe in the right to own a gun. I believe in the right to defend yourself. I own lots of guns, more than 3 dozen of them. I hunt and shoot all the time. I do believe in responsibility. I don't think, people remember here in Billings probably you had a guy with a loaded AR marching around in front of a school. Do I think that's okay? Hell no, I don't. I've got kids, and I think our Second Amendment rights need to be balanced with personal responsibility. And when I see people doing irresponsible things, I'm not going to celebrate them. I'm going to call them out. It doesn't, I'm not proposing any new laws. I'm proposing that good Second Amendment responsible folks stand up and decry when irresponsible things happen. And I believe that's where 90% of gun owners are. And let's get this over with because I got to go bird hunting as soon as I get home.
Amen. Well, and that's what I was going to say to you. So I was like, okay, so we kind of painted the picture here. So we have 2 camps here of people like, okay, no, I do care about the guns issue, and I have guns. I want to know. So you're either in the camp of a guy that has tons of guns and uses them all the time and wants to be that, or you're the person that wants to march around with a gun to be scary around a bunch of kids. And he's saying like, yeah, if you're the guy that hunts and has a bunch of guns and uses them and stuff, like no harm, no foul, nothing, that good for you, high five, you're American. He's like, but yes, if you are the people that are like marching through schools and stuff with guns, like we may be having a conversation.
Yeah,
if you're like, I don't do that, don't worry, Ryan Busse's not coming for you.
Yeah, so I do think that it's on us as gun owners to stand up and be for the Second Amendment. And what I mean by that, when people do irresponsible, dangerous things, we should call them out. And there was a time not very long ago in America where gun owners were the very first ones to shout down stuff that was irresponsible. I just think we need to get back to that. And I think we need a governor who is both a proud gun owner, as I am, believes in the Second Amendment, the right to defend yourself, and is okay saying no when it's usually guys. So when a guy does something irresponsible, we shout it down. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think that's the real pro-gun stance.
Yeah, which is funny you say guy, because I'm the same way too. It's like it is guys. Like no offense, I mean you're a guy and I'm a guy. It's like we're allowed to acknowledge like, hey, it's not against us. We are not those guys. But yeah, it does tend to be guys. A lot of guys even of our own race too. And it's not. We're not saying you. And we're not anti-white guy in general is my point. It's like it's okay to acknowledge like, yeah, this one it does seem to be an issue with dudes who are not. Also, though, speaking on this specifically, I'm sure you followed this Georgia situation. I mean, that's very specific. We now have, a kid who murdered people in a school. He's in custody. He's being charged. And now the father who purchased the kid who he knew could be a threat, a gun, and gifted his child a firearm that ended up murdering people is being charged with a ton of serious charges. So there's at least a little bit of accountability, which I would hope all gun owners would agree that, like, yes, if you are that negligent and irresponsible with providing a firearm to a child that is then going to kill people, they should be held responsible. I mean, you would agree, right? Kind of like you said with the common sense gun ownership of like, yeah, you can have a gun, but you should not be giving guns to children who are mentally unstable and potentially school shooters, right?
Look, that's a horrific situation in Georgia. I have my wife and I have 2 boys. There have been times when it's been difficult to drop them off at school. I'm sure that folks driving right now, maybe with their kids in their car, have had those same sort of worries about dropping their kids off at school. And those are bipartisan issues. Those worries and love of our kids do not discriminate between parties. Democrats love their kids. Republican loves their kids. What that father did in Georgia is deeply, deeply, deeply irresponsible. His kid, he knew, had made online threats, and he still goes out and purchases him an AR-15 and gifts it to him. deeply irresponsible. That's not that's a very wrong thing to do, and I do think there needs to be liability for that, and not only because of the horrific things that happen in a school, but if we want to preserve the Second Amendment, then as gun owners, we need to be the first to stand up and say, when you do irresponsible things, we will hold you to account, and that needs to happen there.
Amen. Amen. Also, though you brought it up and kind of said, "Hey, this isn't a right-left issue. We all agree," and you're correct. This is beyond the pale. Everybody agrees. But I will say, how to respond and like the tone of this happening is a partisan issue. I mean, we heard from presidential campaigns yesterday, and we don't even need to get into who's who. One side said, "This is unacceptable. This can't continue to happen," and the other side said, "This is a fact of life." So just realize there are, at least going forward, this situation we can agree is tragic, but going forward, one side says this needs to stop, we can't have it, and the other side says, no, it's going to keep happening. We need to figure out other things.
I think as gun owners, and especially somebody like me, I hope to be the governor of the state, we need to be leaders in responsibility. We need to stand up and say, in America, we ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? We ought to be able to have guns, which I appreciate and do myself, and be able to be responsible and keep kids as safe as we possibly can. I don't know who is against keeping kids safe in schools, so we ought to be able to do both of those at the same time.